I'd rather be too high than too low, because I think I'll catch more people and get a better clinical outcome for more people if I'm a little bit on the high side in terms of dosing. I've geared my clinical practice towards assuming that everybody is at the lowest end of normal.
So is this part of the standardization process? Like, how do we standardize? Because currently humans are very variable. And in the morning, my blood content is different than in the afternoon. And, you know, maybe my platelet count is 200 and yours is 400. Like, how does that significant variability play into this standardization?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you how I approach that. That's a really good question, because that is basically where we're at every day clinically. How do you decide how much blood to draw? How do you decide, you know, what dose? And for me, in my practice, I simply try and match what I think is the highest level evidence for the clinical indication that I'm looking at with a particular patient. And that comes down at this point, in my opinion, to platelet dosing, which is simply volume times platelet concentration. And you have to have a hematology machine to really know that. So that's why we have a hematology machine. That's why a lot of people on this phone call.
Don't forget, if you want more about the business of orthobiologics, I have a podcast, or you can go on my website, The Business of Orthobiologics, and tune in.
Or on this webinar, have a hematology machine so we can track our dosing. In order to do that properly, and because I don't often have a starting platelet count, and because it can vary, I've geared my clinical practice towards assuming that everybody is at the lowest end of normal. And so I'll say that again. I've geared my clinical practice with PRP towards assuming that everybody walks in with a platelet count of 150, which is the lower end of normal. And based on that, the one variable I can really control in the office that day is the amount of blood I draw. And so if I assume, and I can control my protocol and my centrifuge times and which kit I use. So if I know I have a B+ to A+ kit, one of the better kits, whether it's 2-spin or single spin, and I assume the starting platelet count is 150, then that tells me how much blood I probably need to draw to get to a certain dose. And that's the one variable I can control. Once I have that butterfly needle in, truth be told, the answer is often 120 cc's. There's somewhere between 60 and 120, and because the kits tend to come in 60, you know, or 120, or there's one kit that starts at 80, which is a nice feature, but for most of the time, I'd rather be a little bit too high, meaning I'm drawing 120 for a lot of these clinical indications, even though the end volume of PRP may be relatively low depending on where I'm using it. At this stage, I'd rather be too high than too low, because I think I'll catch more people and get a better clinical outcome for more people if I'm a little bit on the high side in terms of dosing, as opposed to being a little bit on the low side.
Don't miss out. Please subscribe to our newsletter now to stay ahead of the world of orthobiologics. You can find the link below.